It's upsetting to me to see high income professionals living paycheck to paycheck without understanding the secrets of sustainable wealth. Sustainable wealth is where you increase your net worth and free net cash flow in a way that allows you to start creating more passive and controllable income streams. I'm Justin Hitt from Sustainable Wealth Secrets, where we talk about converting your income into net worth and cash flow. Now, there's a variety of methods that we use to do this, but when we work with a client to implement these strategies that consistently increase your wealth, produce millions of dollars in net worth, and ultimately produce for you unstoppable, sustainable wealth in 12 months or less, we use these 5 key strategies that I will share with you today in this episode of the podcast. Now, the first thing we got to understand is that, yes, the economy changes. Yes, skills that were in demand yesterday are not in demand today. Yes, businesses make mistakes and they go under. There's a lot of reasons why your high income may dissipate, no fault of your own, that you must be aware of, and that's why net worth is valuable. If you don't have a nest egg or emergency fund or an ability to sustain yourself at the same or better lifestyle, even retirement can be a disappointment. But again, with the economy the way it is, with the way inflation is, if you don't understand the numbers well enough, you could actually be earning more money yet having less buying power. I don't know if it was Ben Bernanke or one of those other chairmen of the Federal Reserve that said, what good is a fully funded retirement account if the money doesn't buy basic necessities? Now, I'm paraphrasing. I don't have all my notes here specifics, but I hope you understand that inflation is eating away at your buying power. And so passively earning and not having that net worth growing faster than inflation means that no matter how hard you work, you're always falling behind. Now, many of the strategies that we teach are not welcome strategies. They're strategies that seem old school. They're strategies that people don't want to do. But that's, again, the reason why there's a 1% who is significantly wealthy than everybody else. They're able to not only make their money work for them, but they're able to make that money work faster by having more control over economic outcomes and maintaining personal liberties so that they can grow their wealth without fearing or worrying about it falling away. Even the Rockefellers, some of the richest people ever in the world, their original Rockefellers, John D. Rockefeller, in his older years, feared that the money was going to go away. That's not sustainable. What good is it to be wealthy if you fear around every turn somebody's there to take the money from you, somebody's trying to take advantage of you, or otherwise trying to get your money? Now, that all could be entirely true. When I was running a company, I had president on my business card. I was making really good money for a 20-something-year-old guy. I thought it was cool. I could go to a club and hand my business card to a girl that I'm talking to, and suddenly I'm the most popular person in the room. But the truth of the matter is, they very often wanted me and my friends to pay for their drinks and to show them a good time and to spend our hard-earned money rather than something that is more meaningful and more sustainable. While it was a hell of a lot of fun, it took me going bankrupt to understand that the people around me, while they were cheering on my successes, weren't always looking to help. I had great board of directors. I had to fire them because they were they were supportive, but they didn't do any work. I've had great staff that I had to let go. I've had horrible staff that I kept. These decisions impacted my net worth, but there are certain skills and behaviors that my mentors taught me. And through the interviews I've done over the last 20 years with high net worth individuals and wealthy individuals, because, by the way, most of my clients are multimillionaires or very high net worth individuals or have super high incomes, I interview them to discover what are the sustainable secrets to wealth, and it is not what you think. Wealthy individuals are not sitting around driving Lamborghinis and fancy cars, and very often it's quite the contrary. The more rich somebody looks, the less likely they are to be rich, because, again, when you increase your wealth, you will become a target. And in order to make it sustainable, you need to have strategies for protecting your assets. You need to have strategies that reduce your liability. You need to have strategies that create passive income that's hard for other people to see. So the outsider looking at you doesn't know that you're kind of made yourself a trust fund baby. You didn't make your kid a trust fund baby, because that's actually a problem that's in itself, but you've self-insured yourself. You've built up a nest egg. You've built that net worth to actually provide for you. You've bought assets that cash flow so that even if the economy fails, even if inflation goes through the roof, you're still going to have the security and still going to have the transferability of wealth you need in order to produce the results that you're looking for. Now, people around you, from the government to your neighbors, are constantly trying to transfer your wealth into their pockets. That's just the way life is. In fact, in the United States, we teach a form of consumerism that almost defines your value by the amount of money you spend, which leaves the majority of Americans in heavy debt and six-figure professionals even living paycheck to paycheck. You might think somebody making $250,000 a year is going to be able to pay their bills every month, but no. Sometimes the insecurity of the earnings, sometimes the fear about the earnings causes them to overspend. Maybe it's a spouse that's overspending. I had a CPA a while back explain to me that they have a client with $1 million of income every year, and they still call in to see if it's okay to buy stuff. Now, they do this because they've set up an arrangement so that they have the minimal amount of money in their personal presence, and they use the expertise of a CPA to determine if these high-ticket purchases can be made in a cost and tax beneficial way. They're not just willy-nilly buying, cars and stuff like that. But again, they purposely put themselves paycheck to paycheck. Well, many of the people who listen to this podcast, many of the people who have been clients in the past, had to overcome the challenge of actually being paycheck to paycheck and not having a choice because they didn't understand these 5 strategies that I'm going to share in today's episode. So it doesn't matter where you're at. You need a clear idea of what you want to achieve and why. And in this case, it's sustainable wealth. It's passive income that far exceeds your actual income. Now, in the program that I've set up, and you guys should know this about me by now, is that I interview high net worth individuals. I interview private clients. I meet executives for organizations. I did a big interview series where I interviewed almost 100 individuals who've escaped a failing government or massive inflation. I've leveraged the selection bias of those who are successful to develop a system that helps people consistently and regularly basically double their income and accumulate millions of dollars in net worth in 12 months or less. Now, again, you're going to have some kind of income. This isn't a Hail Mary miracle program. I don't have Mother Teresa in a bottle who's going to grant upon you the value and the knowledge that's going to give you this success. But through these 5 steps that I'm sharing with you right now, you're going to be able to leverage up the opportunity you have to significantly improve where you are and move to where you want to be. Number 1 is you want to have incremental improvement tied to what's called the ratchet effect. So one of the challenges people have as they earn more income is that they increase their spending. If you're able to earn more income and then the new income you gain goes into assets that cash flow or joint venture opportunities or improving your knowledge, there's a whole range of things that we teach, you will actually be able to plus your income to the point where it won't matter how much you spend because you have more and more passive income, creating that safety net that's necessary. Now, the ratchet effect is the sustainable wealth, where you have assets that cash flow that are difficult to be taken away. Now, that could be asset protection, that could be how the asset is structured, or even the type of asset. But the key is understanding, number 1, the incremental improvement must be tied to a ratchet effect to prevent things from sliding backwards. Maybe you have a high income today, and you've been building passive income, and then you lose your job. Well, that passive income provides you a backstop, not only to cover in an emergency, but actually to keep you from falling too far backwards, because the more poor you get, the harder it is to get rich. And again, we're not talking about rich, and this leads into number 2, because very often people are cash rich but asset poor. In order to have a high net worth, in order to have true wealth, is having a multiple of your living expenses set aside and ready to call into action to support you. And then, of course, those living expenses grow with your lifestyle as well as growth inflation. And so to do that, number two, you need a clear, specific outcome, not soft goals. So when I talk to people that say they want $1 million net worth, and we start exploring that, and we realize that $1 million is only going to produce $40,000 a year in passive income or interest-based income, and their living expenses are $250,000 a year, it either tells me that the $1 million is going to be enough for 4 years of living, maybe 5 years, or it's not enough if they have retirement in 10, 15 years from now. So again, we want specific and measurable outcomes, not necessarily goals. An outcome is a tangible result, kind of a deliverable, and we'll get into that in number three, a deliverable that places you somewhere where it's difficult to come back. So now we wanted to position you in a good place, because if you're completely flat broke, living paycheck to paycheck, and you get laid off tomorrow, or you got laid off last week, there's a burn rate that's going to eat away all your money, and eventually it'll be hard to overcome a failed credit score, losing your home, the emotional and self-esteem related issues that come with having this kind of thing happen, very often no fault of your own. But again, if you don't have the skill set necessary, then you won't be able to keep the things that you have. There are all kinds of stories about people who have loaded up on gold. It was inflation protected. Maybe they had gold and silver, and then the economy crashed and they still had wealth, but now they're so desperate that they've got to sell off that, and the wealth didn't last through their economic hardship. Now, the bigger case here is when you retire and you outlive your retirement, because people are living to 90, even 100 years. If you don't have the proper insurance, if you don't have the proper financial plan, and you don't have the proper allocation of funds, converting that income into net worth, then you will find yourself harshly surprised. And that's why outcomes are important. What is the outcome that you want? And by the way, you should have the two most powerful tools available to mankind today, which is a pen and paper, to focus on writing down what we're talking about today. As you have actionable ideas that we're sharing with you here today, you want to be writing down the details so that you can make sure you're benefiting from what we're sharing. Because number three, when you have specific outcomes, you can now use a project management approach to make those outcomes deliverables of a deliberate plan to allocate your resources and implement your resources in order to create that result. It really is that simple, folks. Now, I'm not a financial planner. I'm not your CPA. I work with teams of people who help my clients and help me turn income into wealth. In fact, to double income, even accumulate millions of dollars in net worth in 12 months or less. But it starts with a systematic approach. Now, I will admit, I have not always followed a systematic approach. I have not always followed the project management approach to focus on a few activities rather than many activities. It's a fault that we all have. But again, with a little bit of accountability, you can be back on track with your plan and actually achieve your plan, actually be encouraged to achieve your plan, actually see the results of your efforts, rather than what happens to most people and causes even high-income professionals to live paycheck to paycheck, is that they're slaving away at some company who constantly shovels more fires on top of them, and they lose connection with what really matters and the whole reason they're working in the first place. And they use lifestyle and consumerism in order to feed that emptiness that's in their heart when it comes to actually getting to a goal and result. Next thing you know, they've either been laid off in their 40s and never got a job again, or they are ultimately at the retirement party where they get the gold watch and then a kick in the ass as they go out on the streets without enough in retirement, and they find themselves struggling, maybe working as a Walmart greeter because, again, they didn't have the sustainable wealth strategies that we teach, and they didn't have a project management approach to implement. Now, more importantly, number four, as you get older, you kind of want to do less and less stuff, and you want to enjoy the things of life that you've been able to either accumulate or to been able to leverage. And unfortunately, again, high-income people end up living paycheck to paycheck or not having enough for retirement because they start celebrating too early. They don't have the systematic approach that project management brings, but they also didn't systematize what works to automate it. So number four is, are you building assets that cash flow. Now, that asset could be a business, it could be intellectual property, it could be real estate, it could be a lot of different things. It really depends on the individual. But if you don't systematize these things to automate them, and I'll give you an example of automation here shortly, then you're going to end up actively working for that income. And as your ability to work reduces, not because you're old, it's because you're probably not interested anymore in slaving away for fixing somebody else's problems, especially when you got problems of your own. Or you could find yourself laid off. But again, an example of automation, for example, is leveraging an assistant to package some of the things that you know how to do to create maybe intellectual property, which generates a residual stream of income. It could be in an organization mentoring people, demonstrating your ability to lead, and moving from a individual contributor role into a management or even an executive role. It could be working at a startup and having the equity in the startup, building your overall wealth. Again, what you do depends on implementing all of these strategies so that you can get a plan that's specific for you. That's what we do in our 12-month program that is a results-based program that focuses on doubling your income while accumulating millions of dollars in your net worth in 12 months or less. Now, again, if you're making $20,000 a year, it's not realistic to produce the $1 million in net worth right away. We still want to work with $1 million ideas, but ultimately doubling your income and then doubling again will get you in the six figures. Now, what disappoints, before we go into number 5, what disappoints many of my clients or prospective clients is the fact of the matter is that many six-figure earners have already earned millions of dollars a year, and they've spent every penny. They have nothing to show for it. Now, circumstances can cause this. Medical issues can cause this. Economic changes can cause this. Unsuspected or unplanned for problems in your family can cause this. I am not saying that there will not be obstacles, but what I'm saying is if you have the certain skills to overcome those obstacles, you're more able to help your family, you're more able to help yourself, you're more able to help your community. There's a reason I'm still doing this because family situations and other areas where I was able to help. I'm grateful to help. I am truly blessed to help, but it makes it necessary for me to continue to earn and continue to serve clients, which fortunately is something I enjoy doing. So it's a blessing either way. But my point being is that by systemizing what works, you're able to get more passive income, which backstops your situation so that if you do lose your job or something bad happens in the economy or inflation goes through the roof or there's some dumb political decision, you are protected and able to sustain the wealth you have as you, number 5, use the appropriate tools and technologies. Now, here's what's important. The wealth you accumulated in the past needs to be maintained with the current systems of investing, the current systems of what is generating income. See, there's a couple of these banks that failed recently. I think it was First Republic. A couple of these banks had used an old approach by hedging their higher risk accounts with bonds. And then the Federal Reserve changed some interest rates, the Treasury changed some interest rates, and the economy had some weird glitches that were probably due to some like FTX and other big companies, the COVID payouts, the federal deficit. A lot of maybe unforeseen issues created a certain level of risk in the organization where bonds wasn't the best idea. And when bonds went, the backstop for the company went, the organization collapsed, and their fund holders had to be bailed out by the federal government. Now, the FDIC covers up to $250,000 in account balances using the FDIC insurance, which all banks pay into. And then ultimately, this failure happens, and the FDIC is making good accounts with balances higher than the known risk. And now, where do you think that money comes from? Now, they claim it didn't come from taxpayers, but essentially it comes from banking people who are working at banks because the bailout, which it is a bailout, paid for these funds And now all bank charges and fees are going to go up. So again, if you're using old methods, old technologies, that's inappropriate for the current situation, and we ultimately have to reassess our situation on a regular basis. That's why it's a 12-month program and not some magical cookie thing or some necklace that you wear that helps you be more influential, helps you transform income into a net worth, that helps you find better opportunities for prosperity for your children and your family, or even distracts you with the widgets and the next shiny object. This is a 12-month program that's focused specifically on doubling your income so that you can accumulate multi-million dollars in net worth in 12 months or less. Now, I'm not promising you're going to be a millionaire by the end of this, but if we run the numbers, you'll very often see that being a millionaire is not that important with the way inflation is. You need to have 10, 20, $30 million in the bank. Fortunately, these 5 strategies I've shared with you just now can get you started along the way to start building that net worth that you deserve, that net worth that is necessary for you to get beyond the plateaus of achievement and development that you've reached already, so that you can build upon what successes you've had in the past, so that you can realize that living below your means is not a disappointment to anybody. It's a security measure that's necessary to live a wealthy life. Many television shows, fashion industry, mainstream media tells you about how you got to spend all this money. And very often you put the money with people who you cannot trust, do not trust, but because you don't have any other choice, you think that's the thing to do. Very often, the most wealthy, the most successful, the most secure individuals are contrarian to public opinion. Again, that's why there's a 1% who makes more money, who has more assets than everybody else, is because they're doing something different. Now, my approach is very ethical. It's math-oriented. So if you don't like math, you probably don't want to have a high net worth because it does require you to structure what you're doing in a way that's appropriate for your risk tolerance and that's appropriate for your needs. I'm going to bring CPAs to the table. I'm going to bring certified financial planners to the table. You may already have these resources. There'll be lawyers at the table, but ultimately, if you don't do what they suggest and you don't implement it consistently, now I know a lot of people fear that they won't be able to implement consistently, but again, having the support of being in a program, a coaching program, is going to help you do this more consistently. But ultimately, the advice may be contrary to what you're being told in the media, because what the media says is consume, consume, consume. They say, here's a major problem, then they show you an advertiser that can solve it, and then ultimately you haven't solved the real problem, which is draining your pockets and causing you to work harder to have less buying power. Now, I've shared this statistic many times. It's easily verifiable, but the majority of employees who have been in a job for 5 years or more have half or less the buying power at the 5-year mark than they had day one. You might be earning more money, but ultimately you have less buying power. The reason you want net worth, the reason you're accumulating this wealth system, and now again, wealth is defined at the multiple of cash on hand or assets on hand that can be easily converted in order to cover your lifestyle. Now, in some cases, as Benjamin Franklin recommended, you might need to reduce your lifestyle because it's been overinflated by the consumerism and the external pressures that aren't delivering you happiness. And because you're not happy, you're buying more. And again, reducing your net worth. It might be by approaches that are unfamiliar to you, and that's why we bring in the experts. That's why we use math. Math doesn't care what color you are. Math doesn't care what your background is, and it doesn't do anything other than tell you what your free net cash flow is. Then we take the free net cash flow using the 5 strategies I've shared with you today, and those 5 strategies are incremental improvement using and leveraging the ratchet effect. Clear and specific outcomes, not soft goals. Number 3, use of project management approaches. Number 4, a systemization of what works to automate. And finally, an approach using the appropriate tools and technologies. You can take your free net cash flow, put it in assets that cash flow again, and now you've got free net cash flow creating free net cash flow, which you're then securing within the structure and the investments of your organization or your individual family organization in order to accumulate that net worth that is real, live, line items on a sheet. Yes, you're going to end up paying a little more taxes, but the multiples of your growth will overcome the tax position. And then, of course, you'll be able to afford many of the tax strategies that the top 5% and the top 1% use. One such strategy that's available to everybody is running a business. Another such strategy could be some of these tax incentive programs that come up here and there. But again, I don't want you worrying about how much you're paying in taxes. That's kind of the cost of doing business. Okay? I want you to look at the free net cash flow, after-tax free net cash flow, and the utilization of that money in building your net worth and your future income, where in order to be sustainable, you've got to have the people networks in place, you've got to have the income streams in place, you've got to have the goals or the outcomes defined clearly, and then ultimately, by design, drive towards those results. Now, if you're interested in this 12-month program called the Results-Based Program, where we help you double your income while accumulating multiple millions of dollars in net worth in 12 months or less. Now, again, the doubling the income is highly probable, easy to do. We usually can add passive income very quickly, but we'll test the ability to reach the $1 million net worth. And by the way, if you're already $1 million net worth, we should be at $10 million because ultimately the buying power is significantly reduced. But we're able to show you in a forecast with your free net cash flow, legitimately verified by a CPA, how soon you'll be able to hit that number. And if you're making a lot, we've had clients that ended up with $1 million in cash. So it's kind of on their net worth, but there's different ways of approaching this. But bottom line, folks, if you're interested in this 12-month program, visit me at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com. Go to the contact page. Let me know you're interested in the results-based program that uses these 5 strategies that we just gave you. But here's a little secret. If you even have the smallest bit of doubt that this is going to work for you, you can try for yourself using these 5 strategies. Grab a sheet of paper, think about these strategies, write these strategies. There are hundreds of podcast episodes. There's a free newsletter. There's many ways that you can put your toe in the water if you want. This program is for serious players only because it goes in depth into your financials. I do sign a non-disclosure if that's something you want to do. I have worked with family offices. I've worked with high net worth individuals. It's a lot easier to add $1 million to somebody who's already got $3 million. But again, these strategies work at all levels of high-income professionals. So if you're making 6 figures or more, these strategies work, they're consistent, and you'll be able to measure results and performance. And I'm so confident that this stuff works well that I've built out a 12-month program to implement it with small groups of people. Now, the way it works is you're going to let me know you're interested in the program. I'm going to send you a brief assessment, and if there's an open slot in the program, then you'll complete an application, schedule an interview. It's not just you could just give me money and join this thing, because I work with you one-on-one as a private client to double your income. It could be a business, double the income of the business, and to ultimately produce for you that $1 million plus net worth. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets, and we've shared with you the 5 strategies to boost your income, to grow your net worth, and to ultimately do it in a way that cannot be taken away. If you have questions about what I've shared, comments, concerns, or success stories, visit me at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com. Go to the contact page, ask your questions. We're here to help you transform business relationships into profits guaranteed. This is a business-based approach. It's a lot easier if you're running a business or you're in a leadership position in some kind of business, but ultimately, I'm here to help you gain results. I love to hear your questions. Your questions are the foundation of the programs we put together here. And then, of course, if you're already a high net worth individual and something like this is not useful to you because you're already in the top 1%, top 5%, you're already got a significant net worth, and you want to do a confidential interview, I just explained what I do with all the interviews. I try to find the patterns, and very often the children or members of family offices like to have a copy of that interview for posterity or legacy purposes, because we really do dig deep into the kind of how it's been done, so that your kids can model it and match it. And this particular service that I offer is powerful. Plus, the report I write specific for your family is very useful to kind of set the guidelines for how that wealth should be managed over the long term. I don't produce these on my own. We do have a small team that works on these types of things, and of course, I am always working with the professionals that either my clients provide or vetting professionals that clients provide, because we do provide a kind of an auditing service. So whatever you're interested in, let me know. But most importantly, simply ask the questions. The questions are the key to your outcomes. The questions are the key to your successes. Thanks for listening. This has been the Sustainable Wealth Secrets Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.